research topic discovery and gap identification through literature review. I think this is the real timely relevant topic for you all. Uh, how you can write your dissertation, because dissertation or research, any kind of research start with your research topic, right? So how you can find out a research topic, it's going to be discussed today. Right. So before that, I would like you to know, or I would like you to answer this question. What is the foundational component of any research project? Right. So you can use, before starting, I would like to do a small activity. You can use this class code here, scan this uh, barcode, QR code with your mobile phones, and you can log in. When you scan this, you can log in into this particular slide. The question is, what is the foundational component of any research project? This is the question. You can answer now. Only two has given the answer as literature review. Literature review is the foundational component, according to you. And only one has answered research question is the foundational component. What is the foundational component of any research project? 5 people have answered. 7 people have answered. Only 3. The majority saying that literature review. It is literature review. Only 1 is saying that it is the research problem. Right. 9 has answered. Majority saying that it is the literature review. Right. 2 of you are telling that the research problem is the foundation component, right? Foundational component. Another 2 is saying that it is research question, right? So these are the top answers: literature review, research problem, research question. So we can merge these two. All these two is talking about the same thing. Right. So this is again inserted and we minimize. And this is your answer. Right. So what is my answer? Right. So this is the correct answer. Literature review. Some people think that the research problem is the main or foundational component, right? But once you understand the research problem or realize the problem is there for any kind of a research, right? So directly go to the literature review to check whether uh, there is any solution or answer to the problem. If you find the answer or a solution to the problem, you find that the knowledge is already there to solve that problem. And by using that knowledge, you can simply uh, 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 you can solve the problem, simply solve the problem. But suppose you go to the knowledge bases and find that there is no knowledge, right? So that's why the problem prevails or problem exists. Still, the problem is existing because there is no knowledge, current knowledge. So in that case, you find a knowledge gap, right? So gaps simply identified from the knowledge bases. Knowledge bases are stored, or knowledge bases are simply the literature, right? So literature, once you identify or realize any kind of a problem prevailing in the society, then you directly need to go to the knowledge bases to find out the solution. right? You check the literature, in fact. You check the literature and find out whether there is any knowledge to solve this problem. If you find any solution, you can solve the problem using that knowledge or solution that you find, right? If you can't find, obviously, you need to start a research. You need to start a research in order to find a solution. Solution is the new knowledge that you want to create, right? So literature review is the foundational component, right? As you said. Uh, right. So then what you need to include in a problem? So once you identify, because you realize, you identify problems, various types of problems to research, right? You note that you simply observe by looking, simply by observation, you identify a problem, right? So there are so many problems for the research, right? So in a research problem, what you need to basically highlight, and that problem need to be identified first, and then you directly go to the literature review to check whether sufficient knowledge is available, whether there are knowledge gaps relating to the problem, right? In a problem, what you need to highlight basically, because I know you all are supposed to do a research as part of your dissertation, as part of your degree program, right? So in that case, you need to prepare a research, you need to do a research. For that, you need to identify a research problem, right? So problem need to be mentioned in the first chapter, right? Probably the second paragraph in your uh, dissertation or thesis, right? So then problem statement or problem need to be defined. A paragraph need to be developed for the problem, right? So in that paragraph, what you need to include, right? So basically, you need to include two components, address two components. One is the reality of the problem, evidence for the problem, right? So you need to reveal that there is a problem. You need to emphasize the gravity of the problem with strong evidence, right? Provide concrete evidence that the problem truly exists with evidence. Please note that this is really important, right? So evidence, right? Rather than just saying, you need to provide strong evidence for the gravity of the problem, magnitude of the problem. And you can use current statistics, studies, reports, case examples, or data to illustrate the problem's existence and its magnitude or the gravity, right? So show that the issue is not hypothetical. When you provide these statistics, obviously when you are providing these statistics, case examples, data, obviously you can uh, say that it is not hypothetical, right? It is not hypothetical. It is real, right? So you need to provide real evidence regarding a person or organization or a system that depends on the nature of the problem, right? And also, once the reality is identified, then you need to identify gap, right? So gaps are identified through literature, right? So clearly identify what is lacking in the current knowledge, solutions or approaches, and why current methods or theories or technologies are insufficient, right, to solve this problem, the reality, and articulate the need for new insights, interventions, or understanding by highlighting what has not been addressed by previous research, right? In the current knowledge bases, what has not been addressed, and what is available and what has not been addressed needed to be mentioned. So what is available need not to be mentioned, and basically you need to emphasize, highlight what has not been investigated. That's why we have a problem existed now, because we don't have sufficient enough knowledge to solve that, right, in the current knowledge bases. So then gaps or the need for the research needed to be emphasized. Basically, these two components need to be included in the problem paragraph or in the problem for your research. But apart from that, there are some other things I will highlight later on, all these things. But for now, we will focus on these two. Reality, right? So if you take, for example, COVID-19, right? So see this, can you please go through this paragraph? At the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, the rapid spread of the SARS-CoV-2 virus resulted in high infection and death rates worldwide, right? So for example, by April 22, more than 2 million cases and over 120 deaths were reported globally. Right? So this is more specific. So this is talking about this in this paragraph, the gravity of the problem is really emphasized with real statistics, right? You can see 2 million cases, 120, the date, right? So all these things highlighted. And this is a worldwide case, right? It's affected globally and highlighted all these things, right? So this is the reality, right, of COVID-19 problem, evidence for the problem. And then need or gap. So then people began to people began to search the current literature, and they found that no any vaccine, antivirus for the COVID-19. Then people realized that there was uh, there were so many gaps. Knowledge gap, at the same time, practice gap. Right? For example, if you can go through this, no effective vaccines or antiviral treatments were initially available. So people found that no any antiviral treatment, no any vaccine found, which means that gaps in knowledge. And also, scientific and medical communities did not yet understand the virus's mode of transmission, immune response, so how to develop an effective and safe vaccine. So there was a practice gap as well, right? So theoretical or the knowledge gap, and at the same time, the way how we handle it. People didn't know about it, the way how they handle it, right? So that is the practice gap. And knowledge or practice gap means that those, right? So the world had no proven method of handling these infections. Then they were unable to control that. And control efforts relied primarily on social distancing. So that those are the things that they practiced and research. And then due to these two gaps, researchers urgently needed to develop new knowledge on how to handle this, on how to find antiviral treatment, right? So then people began doing research, right? So that's how research process started with. And to be more specific, right? So see this, right? So how you can rely on this? 2 million. So you simply say this, 120 people, 20,000 deaths. There is no source, only figures, right? So we can't rely on, we can't trust all these figures. Anyone can say the gravity of the problem by his or her own figures, something like this, right? So you need sources, right? So you need to refer reliable sources, and those must be referenced, cited, rather than merely mentioning the problem or evidence like this. That's why you need to go through the current literature, current knowledge bases. You can cite which report, but WHO which report, WHO which report, right? Any other kind of source you can cite, right? Citations are needed for this, right? So see this one. And at the same time, for this one as well, no citations, no reliable evidences provided. Even though this is factual, specific, but you can see simply some statements, right? But no evidence. Evidence are sources from which you took this, from which you got this, all these statements needed to be cited. So citation and referencing is very much important to denote that you have read so many things in the literature, right? Rather than merely mentioning the problem statement like this. That's why you are supposed to go through the literature. Since today's topic is uh, that, I'm focusing on how you can review the current knowledge and find a topic and how to develop your problem, right? So see this rather than the previous one. So this is more specific. You have so many citations, right? So work engagement is the problem. Since you all are come from HRM backgrounds, I believe. I'm taking an example from HRM. So how work engagement is a problem today, right? So you need to state the reality of the problem first. Why, how the work engagement is a problem today. Go through this paragraph. Employee engagement defined as a sense of, this is the background information up to this point, in order to have just a rough understanding about what is employee or the work engagement to the general reader, right? So that can be mentioned in the background section in your dissertation if you want. But since I'm referring only the problem, just in order to have a rough understanding, what does this mean to the general reader or the participant, I included this statement here, right? But originally, this must be placed at the background section, right? So this is the basic background for the work engagement. Employee engagement define this and is considered essential for organizational success, impacting financial performance, customer satisfaction, employee retention, and overall well-being. So this is the importance of employee engagement. Despite its importance, global engagement rates remain alarmingly low, with only 20% of employees worldwide being truly engaged at work, right? Out of the workforce globally, only 20% of people are only engaged with their job. So that's a problem. According to this is a reference, right? So Gallup is an international organization which is doing research globally, especially on job satisfaction, employee burnout, and work engagement. That's a American-based organization, research organization, consultancy organization, which is doing research, surveys, especially on work engagement, right? So this source is really reliable, right? They are producing annual reports globally, annually, and I referred this and to this figures, right? So according to them, only 20% of out of all worldwide working force, out of worldwide working force, only 20% are engaged, which means that 80% are disengaged from their job. So that's a problem, right? Disengagement translates into employees being physically present, right? 60% means they are physically present but mentally and emotionally disconnected. They are physically in but mentally out. They don't contribute to the organization. They are not loyal to the organization, ultimately leading to significant organizational losses, right? So taken from these studies, right? Taken from these studies. I have referred these studies, right? So like this, you have to provide evidences. And since suppose if you are targeting to conduct your research in Sri Lankan context, this is global. This is global statistics, right? So you can simply say this is globally prevalent problem. And if you are targeting to focus on specifically to a particular context, then you can target that context. You need to mention the problem in that context as well, right? So when looking at Sri Lanka, engagement is notably problematic. In 2016, the engagement rate was 38%, right? Engagement, when compared to the global rate, we have somewhat higher rate, 38, but still low. But this figure dropped to 27% in 2020, 28% in 2021, and 26% in 2022, right? Which means that we have a decreasing trend. That is again a problem according to Gallup International 2017, 21, and 2023 reports, right? So this is a real evidence. This decline contrasts with other South Asian countries. India saw engagement rise from 13 to 33, right? That is a significantly high number, from 13 to 33, right? So India is having a big burden. And Bangladesh from 31 to 34, right? The region employee engagement is decreasing, right? In the region as well, from the Gallup report, right? Those evidence were taken from the Gallup report. The persistent low engagement signals a real and systematic organizational issue, right? So in order to justify this, we have provided enough information, right? To denote that the work engagement is a problematic to the world or to the organization, right? So reader cannot really understand that the engagement is a problem by reading all these statistics, right? So systematic and organizational issue. What engagement, work engagement is a systematic organizational issue. Then what are the losses? Because we say that disengagement creates so many organizational losses. You can include this paragraph, right? These things as a paragraph here, as a separate paragraph. Then after that, you can start writing, you start talking about Sri Lankan figures, right? So what are the losses? Reduced organizational performance extracted from these articles, increased disengagement and absenteeism, reduced resource wastage, high turnover and absenteeism, lower satisfaction and organizational commitment, emotional exhaustion and burnout, declining employee performance, negative impact on workplace culture. So we have provided enough citations, right? To denote these facts are real, extracted from original research studies, original knowledge bases. To denote that we have gone through several knowledge bases and identified what are the possible losses, right? And you can include all these things somewhere here as a new paragraph to denote what are the organizational losses. Then reader really understand what the problem it is, right? Then Sri Lankan figures. Then after that, the next part, this is the evidence. This is the reality, right? So this is the reality. Then gaps. So how you can include gaps with strong evidence, right? So causes, solutions to the problem. Then the only problem is work engagement, low work engagement. Then you can find out what are the causes for this problem. You can think about what are the causes or what are the possible outcomes, right? How can we solve this problem, right? So with that thinking, you can develop a small conceptual framework. You need to conceptualize the work engagement problem, right? What are the possible causes and how that can be solved, right? Since that is a problem, you can think of, right? Think about it. And by thinking, while keeping that in mind, you can again read the literature, right? So then you can simply understand what are the causes or solutions to the problem. Right? Research on employee engagement has indeed identified multiple determinants. Right? So these are talking about determinants, including job characteristics, supervisor support, organizational justice, and HR practices. right? So indeed identified multiple determinants, which means that in the knowledge bases, you have enough knowledge on what are the determinants on workplace work engagement. So these are the sources in which clearly they have found that these are the uh, causes or the factors that influence work engagement. For example, if job characteristics sufficient well defined job characteristics provided, obviously work engagement can be increased. So when the supervisor really supports, work engagement can be increased, right? When the organizational justice are practiced, obviously work engagement will be increased. Those things are available in the knowledge bases, right? You don't want to take all these variables into further investigations because the knowledge bases are there, solutions are there for this problem, right? You need to think about, because still we have that problem with this knowledge, because this has been already found available in the knowledge bases, but even though these has been available, still we have that problem. Then you need to find out another sources or another factors that can be that can that can boost work engagement, because these knowledge bases currently available, prevailing bases are not no longer enough to boost the work engagement. That's why we have this problem, as you can see, right? So these figures still, we have a significant increasing trend of work disengagement, right? Why we have that significant increasing trend of disengagement? Because we can simply understand that these findings are no longer enough, right, to boost the work engagement. Then we need to think about another sources, another factors from the literature which have been unexplored, right? However, the literature has frequently overlooked the combined influence of evolving gender roles and technology adoption on the engagement, right? So this has not been investigated yet, reviewing over 1,000 articles, right? So I have reviewed over 1,000 articles, 1,000 knowledge bases currently available on these topics in the sense that evolving gender roles and technology adoption on work engagement, right? So gender stereotype and technology, how these two can contribute work engagement has not been yet investigated, right? So that was identified by reviewing 1,000 articles, right? Available in the knowledge bases. Those are the only available knowledge bases, currently available knowledge bases globally, and all of them has been reviewed, right? And identified those gaps. What are the gaps? 1,000 articles on these topics confirm significant knowledge, theoretical and contextual gaps. Knowledge gaps are there, theoretical gaps are there, and contextual gaps are there. Since the study is going to be conducted in Sri Lankan context, no such similar variables has been taken in Sri Lankan context. In fact, globally, there was no any study taken, right? From these 1,000 article reviewing, we identified that no such study that has taken these variables into investigation, which can boost employee engagement, right? And theories like, for example, reviewing, right? Particularly the lack of holistic frameworks. There are no holistic framework integrating this theory, and this theory, right? So three theories integrating into one particular model, right? So there is a theoretical underpinning as well to back this particular phenomena, and identified that no such holistic framework has been developed, right? And the absence of empirical, and again, no empirical study has been tested this particular model, right? So model is this. This is the model, right? Employee or work engagement, gender stereotype, and gender stereotype. So gender stereotype is simply, for now, we simply define it as both husband and wife are working, right? They dual career families are there. With the dual career families, obviously, the employee engagement is high, right? But the byproduct of both husband and wife participating in the workforce, obviously, they may have work-family conflict. Once they have work-family conflict, employee engagement is significantly reduced. Disengagement is there. That is happening in reality, right? So that has not been investigated, and you can't find this similar kind of a study which highlights the same phenomena in the literature, right? So that was identified. This was identified. This gap was identified by reviewing more than 1,000 articles, and how we can intervene the technology to boost the employee engagement. This is the technology factor, right? So we have negative effect, and this negative effect can be moderated by the positive effect of technology, right? So in this particular research, how this is the nature, this is what is happening in reality, right? So we have both work-family conflict, but we have both partners working nowadays, right? So then as a result of that, we have work-family conflict, and work-family conflict results to decrease work engagement, right? We need a mechanism. And in order to boost that reduced employee engagement, we inserted the technology factor into this particular model as a positive variable, positive impact. Then we found that the employee engagement can significantly increase by this particular variable. So this is the research problem found and defined and conceptualized, right? So now this is the process. This is how conceptual framework was defined based on the gaps identified. Then what sources reviewed need to be highlighted in the gap statement, right? In reviewing over 1,000 articles spanning key concepts such as changing gender stereotypes, work-family conflict, perceived desirability of disruptive HRM technologies, and work engagement, major gaps were identified, right? So this is how gaps were identified. For the changing gender stereotype, 75 very good articles reviewed, and for work-family conflict, 420 articles reviewed. Perceived desirability of HRM, this is technology factor in HRM, 62 articles reviewed. And for the employee engagement or work engagement, in other words, 260 articles reviewed, right? And those reviews were published separately as standalone review studies and identified these gaps, right? So knowledge gap, obviously, there was no holistic model combining what was highlighted in this, right? In this, there was knowledge gap, and that is highlighted from this, right? You can explain this simple table in your problem statement for the gaps. Then theoretical gap, no holistic model, no holistic model. Holistic model is something like this, right? So in order to support this particular impact, you can take social role theory. And in order to support this particular impact, you can take organizational role theory. In order to support this moderating effect, you can take JDR, job demand resource model, right? So by integrating all these three theories into one particular model, you can't find any framework which integrates all these three theories into one holistic model other than this, right? So then that is the gap. No theory, no holistic model found. That's why in this theoretical gap, no holistic model found combining organizational role theory, social role theory, and JDR into one particular model, right? So you can refer, you can provide citations here like this in order to provide evidence, right? That you have referred all these things and you have taken all these things from by reading all these sources, right? Then empirical gaps. Empirical gaps means this model has been by collecting data by taking a sample. This model has not been tested anywhere else, right? With a sample, with a high sample, representative sample, taking a population, right? So that has not been tested. Theoretically, this is suggested. This is a conceptual framework. This is a something like, idea or opinion backed by uh, uh, theoretical underpinnings, right? So this is suggested. This is proposed, and which has not been tested anywhere else. That was again identified through the literature review. Uh, that is empirical gap and contextual gap. No study on this phenomena in any country, including Sri Lanka, especially private sector employees, since this study was targeted to conducted in private sector. So we use this one, but globally we didn't find any kind of similar study, this kind of similar study yet investigated, right? So this is how gaps presented and no holistic framework. You can simply say that I have already explained. I explained all these things. No holistic framework by taking all these three theories into one has been investigated. So that is those three areas can be highlighted in your gap statement, right? So that is the second most important thing. And the third most important thing is explaining why engagement is a legitimate research problem, right? So you can simply, as noted earlier, you can simply say that low engagement create organizational problems, right? Disengaged employees are less productive, more likely to leave, and can negatively impact workplace culture. Taking from these evidences, I have developed this statement, right? Then empirical gaps, as I said earlier, noted earlier, without understanding how technological readiness, shifting social norms interact to influence engagement, interventions may miss addressing root causes, right? So that is the empirical gaps. Then contextual relevance. In Sri Lanka, particularly, apart from these two, because earlier, as I said earlier, uh, apart from gaps and the reality, you need to highlight these two things as well, right? These two things as well in the problem. Contextual relevance and how it is an opportunity for the theory and practice, right? So contextual relevance, uh, uh, especially when it comes to Sri Lankan context, precipitous decline in engagement rates, high desirability of digital HRM, and evolving gender dynamics makes this problem both urgent and specific. So that is the contextual relevance and opportunity for how this particular model enhance theoretical understanding or how the findings of this study will helpful for practice, especially the policymakers needed to be highlighted in the problem statement or in the problem paragraph, right? So these things needed to be, for example, a novel model. This is a novel model created, right? So this contributed by taking three theories into one model. One particular theory is already developed. So that is the theoretical contribution from this research. And apart from that, you can say how the findings of this particular study contribute to the practice, right? How the policy may be reformed, how training can be engaged, training can be done, how targeted technology involvements like vendor companies, how technology vendor companies can use this finding, right? So those things can be revealed. right? So this is how you can create a sound problem paragraph or problem for your research. All these needed to be so for all these, you are supposed to refer literature. You need to review literature. So that's how the literature review is really important for your research, right? So then what is literature? So literature is a critical aggregation of all relevant and credible prior knowledge sources related to the research question, research problem. Because you understand that you identify the research problem first, but without reviewing the literature, you can't proceed the research with the problem, right? So research, reviewing literature is essential. Then all previously published scholarly works. In other words, literature is all previously published scholarly works related to a given topic or research question, such as books, peer-reviewed journal articles, dissertations, conference proceedings, reports, and sometimes you can take grey literature. Grey literatures are the theses, government documents, and white papers. Right, normally includes for grey literature. And these have taken again for this information, I have referred some literature because these are not my own, right? In order to define what is literature, I have referred these documents and taking the idea from these documents. And I have mentioned those things, right? So that's what you need to do in literature. For any kind of an argument going to be developed, that must be backed by prior literature. That must be backed by sufficient evidence of literature. Right. So now, how you can create, once you identify, once you realize a problem in reality, then immediately you need to go to the literature. You are supposed to do you identified the problem, right? Then you in the problem you identify what is the reality, and you then identify you find out evidences to denote the gravity of the reality, right? To denote the gravity of the reality. So that is again from literature review, and gaps identified from literature review, reviewing the literature, right? And again then uh, again, contextual relevance identified from the literature. Opportunities for theories and practice, again, identified from the literature. Right? For all these, you collect evidences from the literature. Right? So then problem can really be backed by the literature review. Then finally, based on these information, based on these literature review results, you can develop your conceptual framework, right? So then how you can develop your conceptual framework? Simply, you need to identify, once the problem is identified, realized, you need to identify what the dependent variable is and what are the independent variables of the problem. Normally, we take the problem as the dependent variable mostly, but that depends, right? So, for example, if you take for now uh, dependent variable, the problem is the dependent variable. In my case, employee work engagement is the dependent variable, right? So, in this, for example, this is the dependent variable. This is the independent variable, right? So, likewise. Right. Now you need to develop a conceptual framework. Right. In that, what is dependent variable? What is independent variable? If there is any other variable which can intervene to the direct indirect relationship. Right. So direct relationship, for example, dependent independent relationship. What are the variables that can intervene into this particular independent dependent variable, which is called mediating variable or intervening variable. And there may be some other variable which can moderate, right? So we have some other variable which can moderate. So something like that, you can identify all these things from this literature review. So this is literature review, which normally from which you can back the research problem. Right? You can fine tune the research problem. You can find solutions to the problem. You can find causes to the research problem. And ultimately, you can develop a conceptual framework. And depending on your conceptual framework, you can develop what? You can develop what? Research title. Right? So research title can ultimately be determined based on all these. Once the conceptual framework is finalized, then only we can finalize your research title, which must be attractive enough. I don't write lengthy paragraph for the research title, right? So basically, you can highlight what is independent variable and what is dependent, the role of mediators and moderators, for example, right? So, for example, the role of what is independent, impact of this on this, colon, the role of mediators and moderators, for example. So that's how you can simply create the title, and title must reflect at least independent and dependent variable. Then reader can understand what the problem is from this research. Right. So now, how you do this reviewing literature? How you review literature? Right. Literature review is the appraisal of current knowledge. Right. Please take the word reviewing. Right. It is not a essay. It's not a survey. It's not a summary of the current research. You are supposed to review the current knowledge. Review in the sense that you need to analyze. You need to analyze. You need to summarize. You need to analyze. Then synthesize a group of related work, right? To test, to develop or to develop a conceptual framework to support your problem, right? So analyzing and synthesizing is simply identifying gaps, right? You need to critically appraise, critically evaluate the current knowledge, right? So in that case, you simply go through the current knowledge and identify inconsistencies, unexplored here, inconsistencies or contradictions or unresolved questions in that particular area. So that is reviewing, right? So that can be done using software tools. Nowadays, there are software tools available to do that or manually. We can do the content analysis. We can do thematic analysis, right? We can do several other analysis using software tools in order to identify the inconsistencies, contradictions, and unresolved questions, right? So all of which represent gaps, right? Because as I said earlier, through the literature review, you simply need to highlight the gaps, right? Now, with that knowledge, literature review offers several functionalities, right? So that provides foundation for research, as you said earlier, right? And that helps for identifying gaps, and that guides for your methodology. Which not only all these, but also you can design your methodology using the literature review, using the knowledge in the reviewing literature, right? So you can take ideas on how to design your research, right? Which methodology is highly recommended, which sampling method is suitable for your data collection, right? All these informations can be obtained from the literature, from the current knowledge bases, how the similar studies on this particular area have been conducted, and what are the common standards of taking a sample, right? And what are the methods that can be used to interview people, collect the data from the respondents, right? So all these things can be what type of analysis tool can be used. If there is a multiple variables used in the method conceptual framework, what type of analytical tool, mathematical tool is mostly appropriate for generating the results, right, in order to test hypothesis. Right? All these can be obtained from reviewing the literature. Right? So theoretical framework can be developed. We can prevent duplications. You can find similar studies because, as I said earlier, by reviewing over 1,000 articles, I was unable to find out any related study regarding this particular model, right? Regarding this particular model, this one. So that's why it uh, 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 presented as a gap. It is presented as a gap. Right now, right. So theoretical framework synthesizes knowledge, justify the research. Right. So now, at the same time, reviewing literature is really helpful for your writing your literature review chapter, because you are supposed to write a literature review chapter. That is the in most cases, that is the second chapter in your dissertation or in your thesis, right? So for that, you can follow this structure. You can use literature review. For the second chapter, this is a template. You can provide an introduction about the literature review. Based on this, for example, based on everything must be dependent on your developed conceptual framework, because this is the conceptual framework. For example, I'm referring, and based on this, you can draft, or you can draft your second chapter, right? That must be dependent on uh, your conceptual framework, research conceptual framework. Then definition of study variables, you can simply, these are the study variable, this one, this one, this one, this one, and these must be defined first, right? Review definitions. And at the same time, you need to provide, rather than just providing definition, a summary of definition or list of definitions, you need to review them, right? You need to review them. How you can review? So this is an example, definition of gender stereotype change, right? So you can simply list down and you can develop your own by, uh, these definitions have been chronologically ordered, right? Starting from 1978 and ended up with to 2020. And in 2022, you can develop your own definition by identifying the inconsistencies, unexplored areas, because all these things, inconsistencies, unexplored areas, are compared with the reality, current prevailing scenarios. Right? So then you can, by simply reviewing the definitions, in the sense that you can create your own definition by referring all these, by analyzing all these patterns in the definitions, all the components highlighted, all the terminologies highlighted. Here, these are the terminologies highlighted, depending on the time, because as you know, any concept, everything is evolved over the time, and this may be evolved over the time, right? So then in 1978, the gender stereotype change has been defined like this. But in the 2020, maybe that definition may not be relevant, right? So then in that case, you need to develop your own definition for this. So that's how reviewing definitions, right? So reviewing definitions, then normally dependent variable can be taken first, the problem, in order to provide definitions. Then determinants simply, or the reviewing of determinants can be provided, simply gaps. For example, if you take this one, right, you can download the relevant articles regarding this variable. And your intention is to find out whether work-family conflict and employee engagement has been two outcomes of gender stereotype change in this scenario. Because you need to find relevant articles, because in this case, you need to check whether these two variables have been investigated elsewhere globally, right? In that case, theoretically, these two variables are outcomes of this. These two variables are outcomes of this variable, right? In that case, you need to find out whether these two variables have been investigated as outcomes of gender stereotype change. And you need to find out those articles and download those articles and need to review, right? Review in the sense that for that you can simply provide descriptive analysis, because as you download the list of articles, you can simply provide descriptives. How many articles you downloaded, who are the authors, how many references are there in those articles, and annual growth rate of those articles can simply be mentioned. Something like this. I will show you all these statistics, right? Descriptives. Right? So once you download a set of articles regarding a particular descriptive results, annual growth rate, right? If you take the year range, the articles published between 2000 and 2022, that is the reference year range. During that period, how many articles published, right, are given here. And what do you call this, average citations received, those informations, and what are the sources, which journals publish them, those can be presented, right? And all these have been created using software tools. I think in order to discuss all these things, the time is not sufficient to discuss all these things in detail, but I'm trying my best to give an overview. Right? So descriptives must be provided for each data set. Then determinants, right? So in this case, no determinant, because if you are taking the dependent variable, obviously, this is the dependent variable. In this case, you need to take the determinants, right? If you are taking this one, you need to take outcomes, right? So since dependent variable is introduced, then you need to take whether these variables have been investigated as the determinants of employee engagement, because you need to download a set of articles regarding the employee engagement or work engagement and check whether what are the possible determinants. All possible determinants needed to be listed and check whether out of all these listed, suppose you need to create a list, right? From the literature, you need to create a list of determinants. In this list of determinants, you can find out whether these variables are available. If there is no any of these two have taken in this list, obviously, you simply note that there is a gap, because which has not been taken for investigation with this. Right? That's how you can simply identify the gaps. Likewise, you can do all these things for all the variables, right? Following the same pattern. And then you need to identify the related theories, right? So related theories, for example, when it comes to this one, if you take these two impacts, this one and this one, you can simply find out a positive impact. So what are the theories? What are the best what are the best fitted theories which explain this impact? What are the best fitted theories which explains the influence of gender stereotype on work-family conflict can be taken and support like this, right? So you can simply take relevant variables and their explanation on the impact of this particular independent variable on the dependent variable can be explained. And ultimately, you can review that one as well here. So in the review, you can simply draw that table, something like this. You can say there is no theory, no holistic theory or model which has been developed by integrating all these three theories. That is again theoretical gap, right? So something like that, you can say review of theories by drawing this kind of a diagram. You can say that no theories, no holistic model has been developed by integrating all these three theories, right? That must be reliable. Oh, that must be, you can't make your own judgments. That must be proved with the real evidences, with the real data sets, with the real article sets. You need to provide clear evidences on these are the articles that I have referred, right? And these are the ways how I reviewed them, which softwares I have used. All these things need to be revealed, and simply by reviewing all these things, you can say this type of a model was created and no one has taken or no one has developed this kind of a model, and that represents a gap, theoretical gap. Right. So then conceptual framework can be presented. Then hypothesis, if it is a quantitative study, hypothesis can be developed using the same, these citations or these references. And ultimately, you can provide the literature contribution to your current study. In that, basically, you can highlight all these gaps, and you can draw this particular table and explain this table in detail on explaining how your research study fill all these gaps identified. So that's your literature contribution, right? Now, this is the basic idea of doing a literature review. I will show you now how to download an article, how to do a review, how to identify a gap very quickly by taking maximum 10 to 15 minutes, right? So that is, for example, normally I know that you are using Google to find articles, but in this case, I'm not recommending Google to search articles because there are so many unwanted things will be generated when you use Google, and especially you are supposed to use databases, research databases. Very good research databases are there which are commonly known as Scopus database, and we have another database called Web of Science, right? So I'm searching for, suppose for example, I'm doing a research on workplace romance. My problem is workplace romance, workplace romance, right? So there are techniques to search. You need to put all these words in quotation marks to take as a entire these two words as an entire term as a one terminology, and you find, right. Anyway, I think it's taking time to load this database. I will use the other database. Will workplace romance. Right, so we have 88 articles and we must have inclusion and exclusion criteria, right? So suppose all these articles are highly relevant, right? You need to review each article one by one because you must have a time frame, right? So you need to determine which time duration that you are taking in. If you want to decide the article, because in this database you have articles since 1992, from 1992 up to 2024, we have articles, right? So this is the number for each year published, a number of articles published. In 2024, we have five articles already published. right? So if you want to decide, if you want to take all these articles, you can cancel this. Otherwise, if you want to specifically focus on the latest articles, right? So you need to check something like this and refine it, right? Then it came down to 20 articles because you screened articles because earlier you had articles from 1992, but you wanted to check whether the articles published from, you want to check the articles published from 2020 to 2025, right? Suppose we are taking all these articles, all these 88 articles, right? So then there are other sources as well. If you want to take all these, like if you want to take specifically articles published in journals, you can click this one and refine it, right? By clicking this one. Or if you want to find dissertations, right, you can check. Or if you want to take all these things, leave as it is. Sorry. Right, all these things, right? So likewise, you have screening options are there on the right, on the left, and you can screen them based on your preferences. And suppose this is the final article list, and this needed to be exported. All 84 can be exported as an Excel file, right? So you can simply export it, all 1 to 88, by taking all these. And so this is the way how you can download bibliometric information of each article, right? So then you can save in your own destination, preferred destination in your local computer. Save. I don't want to save it. Right? Save as something like this. That then right. So I have now finalized document downloaded in that way, in such a way. So this is the bibliometric file. So you have authors, you have abstract, right? And by using the DOI number, it's better you can download all the articles, right? So we have 78 articles. It's better to download all these 78, full version of all these 78 articles, right? So you can simply go copy this one and we have different options in the database as well. You can download the full view full text option is there. Using this one as well, you can download the full article, right? And if you don't have any database access, you can go to the Google and search from the DOI number. And this is the article, right? So there are some articles which are open access, which can be easily downloaded, but this one is restricted. And in that case, I think there are some methods to download. People use Sci-Hub to download the articles. Otherwise, you can contact your library to download articles. If your library do not have sufficient provisions to download articles, better to get the help from a person who is located in outside university. More unfortunately, I know that we don't have sufficient access to the paid databases. All these databases are paid databases. The best thing you can do you can make a friend from an outside country context and get the articles downloaded from them, right? That's the only way. If the Sci-Hub or people used to use Sci-Hub, that is a pirated work. That is not recommended. That is illegal. But people normally use that to download full articles. Because why? That's why I'm saying the full article is needed, because you need to do some identify. For example, only this file gives the abstract and keywords, right? You need to find out the methodology. What methodology used? What is the sample size? Sample size is normally mentioned in the abstract, but not in all cases, right? In this, you have the sample size given in the abstract, right? But not all the information mentions. That depends on the journal or the article type. Abstract normally gives the basic information which may not be relevant, which may not be useful sometimes, right? So you need to, in order to get the information that you want, you need to access the full length article. So in that case, getting the full length article is really important. And what are the definitions used, for example, what are the dimensions used? You need to find out what are the outcomes used, right? In order to find out, you need to download the full length article, and you can insert columns where appropriate here. Right. So, for example, if you want to write methodology, what methodology used? Methodology. You need to identify methodology gaps, for example. You need to identify contextual gaps, for example, right? So then you can simply the country of publication, right? So likewise, you can insert columns, and using this Excel file, you can do necessary analysis. Right. So I will show you how to do a gap analysis, for example, basically. And I'm using a software tool like this. And I insert this downloaded file into this particular software. Right. We have 78 articles already included. And we can use keywords to analyze. Right. For example, you can take all these keywords. Right. Now, right. So this is the summary or the current knowledge bases. What is available in all these articles highlighted here from this diagram, right? I need more time to explain how this is created, what is the logic behind it. But then I'm showing you how to identify gaps, right? So from this version, normally the developer says that, developers of this particular software says that the green, any keyword in green, in blue background, any keyword in blue background, something like this, 213 is very limited research, very limited, only one or two research, which explains a gap, right? Green color nodes, right? Any keyword in green color, a moderate level of research. Any keyword in red color uh, node uh, is more frequent research, right? So then simply by looking at this, we need to find out corresponding finding related to the keywords, which are normally, as you know, keywords are mentioned in the apps just below the abstract of each an article. And those keywords have been taken to draw this diagram, right, by the software, right? So we simply link the findings to each, manually link the findings to each keyword and develop paragraphs and identify what has been investigated commonly and what has not been investigated commonly, right? So since these keywords, most of the keywords are in green backgrounds, some simply means that majority of the research in the current knowledge having limited knowledge, which need to focus further investigations. You can take, for example, career advancement can be further taken into, can be taken for the further in research investigations, right? Something like that, you can identify gaps. So that's how you can identify gaps simply. I will provide you a detailed explanation which is in detailed video in YouTube. Anyone want to dig deeper on this, right? So this is really important for writing your second chapter.